message. So we're going to record this meeting here, and I will post it. I'll condition it and I'll post it up to our YouTube channel when we're finished. So I welcome everybody here, and we shall go from there. So what I just wanted to begin, by the way, with a note here that Jude and I had been talking about for the last month or so.
Kelly?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you again remind people to put themselves on mute?
Yeah, and Mary Shane, if you could please put yourself on mute. I think that's but yes, if everybody could please go on mute, please. And just use your mute function. It'll help dramatically.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm going back. Okay.
And there you go. And that's just, there you go. That helps. Let me finish that up real quick here. Okay, so one of the notes I wanted to make here is that we are in Native American Heritage Month, as Jude and I have been chatting, and Jude compiled this list of tribes that actually existed in our Grays Harbor and Pacific County area, and it's quite a list of tribes when you think about it. So it clearly is a celebration of a lot of Native American heritage that is in our area. And we here in Pacific County, by the way, have a very good relationship with the Shoalwater Bay tribe, as well as the Chinooks, even though they're not officially recognized. And so it is indeed it's very satisfying to know that we have such heritage in our area, and that we as master gardeners, because we are respectful of the ecosystem and respectful of our heritage and our ethnobotany, are very much in tune with our indigenous peoples. So to that point, then, I wanted to get off to celebrate us and begin us with where we are here today. We have a lot to talk about, and a lot of updates from a lot of different folks. And Michael Dolan will be joining us here from Burnt Ridge Nursery. And Michael will be speaking to us not only about what they're doing up at the nursery and the orchards there, but also kind of an urgent plea to all of us to get our orders in, because we've got a lot of this that they've already said that they've already got stuff selling out for 2022. So there's a lot of it, a lot of nursery stock apparently is coming on strong. Okay, birthdays for November. Mary, happy birthday to you, last week. Vivian, Terry are coming up, so Sheila and Chris. So not a lot of birthdays here in November, but obviously we're happy to celebrate them all. Reminder, of course, study group is going to be on the 15th, next Monday on the 15th. It'll be by Zoom, and those details are presented not only in the e-news that was published last week, but also I'm putting them on the slide here. So they are by Zoom, and don't hesitate to reach out don't hesitate to reach out and check the e-news for those details.
Kelly?
Yes, John.
This meeting window is being recorded. I can't close it, and I missed some of the graphics.
Okay, so you're at so what are we seeing here? We should be seeing the PowerPoint slideshow, right?
Well, I got over the top of it. Is this meeting is being recorded? Got it, or leave meeting?
Yeah, so just say got it. The Zoom is very careful about ensuring that everyone acknowledges, right, that they know that the meeting's being recorded.
I was afraid if I hit got it, the whole thing would go away.
No, you're okay. You're okay. No, Zoom wants to, recording, of course, in some states and some countries, right, is a very privileged affair. So we want to be very explicit in knowing that this is being recorded. And you notice that when we do post these on YouTube, we do post it with it, in a public function, so that anybody can actually access it. Okay, so back to study group. Then study group's going to be on the 15th. It's going to be by Zoom. I also wanted to make a note that last month was Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and I came upon this. I found out about this after the month ended, but I wanted to put this up here anyway, just because exactly in these, as John and I were just chatting, we're all becoming very conscious, right, about being online and what sort of exposure we have of our personal information while online. And so the good news is that there's a lot of resources that can help us ensure that that all of our interactions virtually are being protected and are being conducted safely. And on this slide here, you'll see a number of references that the federal government has put forward here to ensure that concerns regarding being online. So again, October was Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but I wanted to put this up and as additional reference.
Kelly,
Yes.
This is Kathleen. I just completed, I think it was about 12 sessions of training that was put out by the Dallas, Texas Senior Source. It's this great support system they have for seniors. And they had a multi-page handout on how to prevent scams, as well as they're going to be having the recordings available on YouTube. I don't know who I should ask, but I could send the links to e-news if anybody thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah, or even post it into our chat today, Kathleen, if that's helpful to you.
Okay, yeah, I don't have the YouTube links yet, but I can try with the handout.
Yeah, okay, but it sounds very helpful. Or just post is something that we can search on if you want to post that into chat.
Yeah.
But exactly to your point, Kathleen, there's some great resources, that are out there, and we should all be looking for them.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, November. So back to OSU, Oregon State, and the November to-dos. There's actually quite a bit that OSU is recommending here for it, for this month, and I like how they phrase last chance to get cover crops in, right? Drainage problems, of course, watching for wet soil. I mean, this is going to be, we certainly had a lot of rain over here this past week. So if you've got soft spots in the soil, you're going to know about it. And interesting about propagation, to take cuttings of rhodies and camellia. John, I want to do a shout out to you. I know you do a lot of cuttings and growth. I would encourage everyone. In fact, John, I'm just going to volunteer right here. Is that if folks are interested in taking cuttings and starting new plants from cuttings, that they might want to reach out to you for support and counsel. Okay. Other planting here, and Louise, I'm going to ask you to mute yourself there. So unless you want to be on posterity for everybody here. Plant a window garden. There's a good idea, for some greens here, chives and parsley over the winter time. And of course, big reminder here, it's a good time to plant trees and shrubs. And this is the primary reason I wanted to invite Michael Dolan to come to us here today to ensure that this is a great time to get stuff in the ground. In fact, here at the Willapa National Wildlife Refuge, we've got a lot of planting is going on here right now this month, in anticipation of overwintering. And of course, good time to plant garlic, and this is the time to get garlic in. And we're pleased to say that Bev has planted somewhat of 80 garlic cloves here. So we're ready for garlic for next summer. Pest monitoring. Reminder, of course, of the use of chemical controls only when necessary and only after reading and digesting the pesticide label. A lot of talk here about raking and destroying leaves from fruit trees that were diseased and discarding mummified fruit. So we often think about composting of leaves and composting of old fruit, but OSU is clearly recognizing that any diseased material should be disposed of, and not left to fester in the soil. Firewood, obviously it's always a key concern. Don't bring your termites and your other insects inside. Moss in the lawn may mean too much shade, or poor drainage. It's kind of interesting. Of course, OSU puts this out for all of the Oregon State. But of course, here in Western Washington, moss in the lawn is kind of an all too common experience here. So it's just no real surprise if you've got moss in your lawn this time of year, right? And baiting a garden for slugs, for it using pet safe traps or baits. Okay. Maintenance. This is obviously the most neglected part, perhaps, of our gardening experience, of ensuring that all of our tools are put away and taken care of. We speak from experience here at the Arnold E. Rupp household of having many tools that are left out throughout the entire summer. And so there's quite a bit of rust built up on a lot of material that we have to bring back into the garage. Draining and storing hoses, draining sprinkler systems, to ensure there's no freeze coming on here, and mulching berries, rhubarb, and asparagus, and so forth. And then at raking and composting leaves, tender evergreens from drying wind, and perhaps even of tying limbs up to prevent breakage by snow or ice. Notice this comment here about leaving ornamental grasses up in the winter, to provide texture in landscape, cutting them back in early spring. And this is something that we often over prune on grasses. I'll leave it at that. Any other November to-dos from anyone? Any other thoughts from anyone in terms of, garden practices that they like to emphasize this time of year? No? Okay, no worries.
Actually, I'm coming in late.
Sure,
Kelly.
yeah,
This
please.
is Garnet. I've been listening to Joe Lample's podcast, and I thoroughly enjoy him. But he is currently, or the last two ones were interviewing a woman who is involved with managing the Brooklyn Bridge garden project, 84 acres. And it was on ecological horticulture. And her emphasis is to not do fall cutback, that the life cycle of the plants need that protection. If you see a butterfly in your yard that you like, go figure out what its life cycle is, so you can keep keep its whole habitat, not just its pollinator for the summer. So an interesting thought, and the grasses made me think of it, because they say definitely, leave those grasses there. They're there for a purpose in nature. So very, very interesting two-part presentation. Thanks.
You muted, Bev. You're muted.
Did Kelly leave us?
Yes.
Huh.
You're muted, Bev, if you want to talk. Lips are moving.
Hope he didn't lose power.
Okay, I'm not muted now. I've got 3 screens I'm looking at. So, I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to do.
Bev, can you see Kelly's agenda?
I can't get to it.
Okay,
Oh, here it
what we're seeing is the Master Gardener Program Handbook.
Okay. And there it is. I'm not sure what he was going to say about that, so I'll move on.
I suspect it's the comparison of the Master Gardener program through WSU versus the foundation.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
And a reminder that we're a 501c3 organization,
It sounds like we've heard this before.
once or twice.
So, so I don't know if Kelly was indicating that Tony and Alina and Brenda have an opportunity to talk. Do any of you want to have share anything? Elena, Brenda?
Okay, I'm working on it. Okay, I think the slide was to recognize that Brenda Priestley has stepped up and she's now a program coordinator with me. And so you will be seeing a lot of information coming from her in the coming months. And I'll talk more about the recommitment form when we do announcements.
Okay. Tony, do you have anything to add?
I don't think Tony's on the Zoom right now.
Oh, I thought I saw her. Oh, well.
Oh, maybe,
Okay.
okay.
All right. Uh-huh.
I'm gonna put yourself on mute there. I'm gonna have you go back and help John. I took you off the meeting. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm back here. Michael's having trouble logging in, and so I'm gonna help him out for a second. So thank you for your patience here. And it's always a challenge, right? You know, we have some people that are not that familiar with what the process is, but I'm breaking here and making sure I send a new link to these folks. And let's see. Again, thank you all for your patience. Okay. Very good. Okay, so I wanted to just where Bev's at right here is that you know, in terms of the presentation, I wanted to make a note and that that the elections were held in November. We had 45 votes that were sent in, you know, from you all, and you know, the positions, of course, that the bylaws say that we're opening up are these positions here. I want to, you know, a big shout out to PJ and the entire nominating committee. And I know I don't have all the folks on the nominating committee here. And PJ, if you could fill in who else was all on the committee that helped you form the list of candidates that were there.
So I can't see all the names that you have, but Terry and Patty and Mike and Shar and Elizabeth and oh my gosh, now I'm blanking. Let me get back to I don't want to forget anybody. Sushila. All of these people were just amazing in trying to hold on. I don't know that anybody else had internet issues, but people went out, reached out. Vivian was another one. Vivian Johnson helped out. And people stepped up to help and suggest people or to suggest themselves. So from my standpoint, this was an amazing committee of 10. No one stepped back. Everyone put their heads together, which is why you got a rather unusual looking ballot this year, so that we have built support into every position, hopefully. Very grateful. We know that there's going to be a continuance with the president, and we'll do what our bylaws said, which is the past president will then help the president who's the president-elect. Thank you, Sabine Price, who stepped right up, and magnificent Kelly Rupp as the vice president. So I feel like in all the positions, we have support, backup support, and no one needs to worry if they can't get on something or do something, because someone else will step up. And really, in this very interesting time where we haven't seen each other as much, I want to echo what Kelly said. There is something about what has just happened during COVID that has proven resiliency, which is a good thing in any organization, and that people did not become disengaged. And I know there are still people out there we need to check into. Elizabeth was great checking in to get ballots to people who did not maybe have secure internet or able to use the internet. So she made sure we got as many ballots out. And I'm just very grateful. Oh, Katie, as always, Katie Lutz was always a great big help. So this is a big thank you. And again, I think it's because
Okay. There you go. Okay, so continuing on is that remember who we are as a Master Gardener Foundation. What we do here is three things. Is that as a foundation, we educate and inform. So we do carry on our responsibilities as Master Gardeners. We do have an opportunity for fundraise for growth. So this is the key part of who we are as a foundation, because the monies that we raise go into our programs and support our programs. And then, of course, finally, is that we come together to socialize and to come to end the socialization. And we recognize that that's a pretty big, important part of being a Master Gardener and enjoying our time together here. So we recognize that these are three purposes of coming together as the foundation, separate from just being in the program per se. So to that point, we recognize that as a service organization, we are here to volunteer. We are here to give back to the community and to engage amongst ourselves. So plenty of opportunities here to support ourselves as we get into 2022, hopefully in a post-COVID future. So a couple of announcements here, and a whole bunch of stuff that's coming up in here in terms of announcements. This is where we got a lot of stuff to share. So I wanted to begin with just a couple things, just noting that right from the get-go here is that, and Terry, I'll leave it over to you, is that there's going to be a home and garden show in 2022. At least this is the current plan.
Yes, the current plan is to bring back our annual home and garden show, and this will actually be our 20th home and garden show. Kind of an amazing statistic, I think. This is to clarify the date because there was some confusion at the last meeting. So it will be the 14th and the 15th, which is the weekend after Mother's Day, like we've traditionally had. And we have, thanks to Mary and Sharon, we have applied for the grant again with the Grays Harbor Visitors and Convention Board. And they're reviewing that, I think this week, they're reviewing all the applications. We generally hear, sometimes it's not until January, but that application has been submitted to support our show. So anyway, with any luck, the show goes on.
So mark the calendar dates now, not only for the show dates of the 14th and 15th, but also for the setup dates here on the 12th and the 13th ahead of time. So again, this is, and by the way, I think, Tara, you made a comment that the Grays Harbor folks have waived any additional deposit, correct?
They have. The fairgrounds, who's always really, really wonderful to us, to our whole group, is not requiring that we include a $500 deposit like we normally have to do to send in with the contract. So
most excellent.
I have people talking on the side.
The good news is that we have Michael here with us, so that's the celebration here. And Michael will be with you. We'll be ready
here.
Yeah, we'll be ready here for a
Michael?
while, John.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and mute yourself for right now, or just to stay quiet here until we're ready for you. But it's exciting. And by the way, a shout out to Bev here on the technical side, who was able to bring John and Michael together with us here today. So again, back to what we're doing at here is that, again, big celebration here, Terry, for you to bring us on and to have us here ready for the Home and Garden Show. Another big announcement, of course, and this is Brenda and Alina, if you want to comment here, it's time to recommit. Time to recommit ourselves to the programmer for next year.
Okay, sure. I can speak up to that. Couple things. I'll do the recommit form first. We're nearing the end of the year. Once again, it's amazing how life continues, even though other things get in the way. So Brenda is going to be in charge of recommitment form. She's sending out the form and again the pest agreement form, which we have to complete every year. We're waiting to get a fillable electronic form for the pest agreement, for the recommitment form. But this year you have 3 ways to submit your information. So you can enter the information on the fillable form and then push send to Brenda. You can download and print the form and write it out and mail it through the postal service. And the third option is you can call Brenda on the phone, give her the information, and she'll write it down for you. So there's really no reason that we can't get this information submitted by the timely date of December 15th, which is what we're shooting for. One of the things that's kind of changed that I want to highlight this year is we're inviting everyone to become a member of the foundation. It's free. It contributes to the strength of our foundation. And as was pointed earlier in Kelly's slides, foundation members are valuable to our organization because they approve funds for the different projects that we do, like the Home and Garden Show, to fill our mission and vision to serve, to support and meet the needs of diverse communities with the relevant, unbiased research-based education and advice for our community's different changing gardening needs. So if you check and become a foundation member, it doesn't mean that if you don't, you can't serve, but it makes us a much stronger, viable group. And then foundation members also work behind the scenes on maintaining current bylaws and updates to our memos of understanding. And these are agreements that we have with people like the museum in Owako for our garden and for our demo beds, okay? So there's going to be a place for you to check if you want to become a foundation member. And again, I said Brenda wants to get these forms returned to her by December 15th, which doesn't give you guys a lot of time to get this information back to her. So I want to thank you for your timely attention to this. And the upside is, if we can get all the information back in December, we can get our roster out in mid-January. So that's something that I'm striving to do. And then as I wanted to say also regarding Give Pulse, thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who's entered the impact hours on Give Pulse. And we had some members that contacted me for help in entering their hours, and they're up and going now. And then we also had some members who sent me their hours on paper this year. That's a true commitment, and I appreciate that. So, next year, after this long year of learning, it's going to be much, much easier. So just know that Brenda and I are here if you have any questions about Give Pulse. We're also available, Brenda, especially if you have questions about your recommitment form. That's it.
Thank you, Alina. So the other big announcement we wanted to give here today is that, the website that that the foundation maintains, pnwmg.org, pnwmg.org. This is what it currently looks like. Well, I tell you, come November 15th, we're ready to go live with a new website. The refresh of the website go lives in just in a little under a week here. It's a great looking website. It'll perform much faster than the current site, and it has a much more clean and professional look. So nothing's going to be lost from the old site as it's brought forward here. But a big shout out to Chris Kohler, to Bev Arnoldi, and of course to Craig Lawrence, for their work over the past 2.5 months here in terms of refreshing the site here. It's a big job. Chris, you're online. Bev, you're online. Any comments you want to share?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. There's a key
Fingers
point.
and toes are crossed. November 15th is the big date.
The reason I wanted to bring Chris and Bev into the conversation here is that if indeed there are issues or questions or broken links or other information that you think is not quite right on the new site, don't hesitate to reach out. But again, be watching for November 15th, pnwmg.org. And then, of course, as Alina just noted, keep recording your hours, right? You know, it's we have an obligation here we have an obligation, obviously, even as veterans or even as emeritus, to ensure that your hours for continuing education and for service hours are recorded, and they really are important. As Alina and Brenda make note, the hours that we record are cataloged and made and make a strong impact in terms of how the volunteers contribute to the well-being of the extension service. So it's really important to WSU that we get these hours in. So Alina and Brenda are resources in terms of helping to use the Give Pull system to ensure that those are recorded. The final announcement I had here is that I wanted to make sure that we know that next month in our meeting here, we'll be joined on Zoom by Jessica Lloyd from DNR, the Urban and Community Forest Program. And one of the things that she'll be speaking about is an urban and community tree stewardship certificate. I mentioned about this last month, by the way, 20 continuing education hours through this program here. So again, December 14th, that's the second Tuesday, that'll be our next meeting, and we'll go from there. But I wanted to get back to other announcements here. Anybody?
Yeah, this is Sushila. I just wanted to do a shout out and thank you to all the presenters that showed up at the Ocean Shores Library Saturday. Kathy Sandifer, Sabine, Valerie, Anna Betancourt. These are all North Beach people. Bridget, myself, and we had 7 solid prospective 2022 intern trainees. So, and they're all very, very excited about starting the program. But I had a great question from a couple of people saying, well, March is a long way off. What do we do in the meantime? So chatted with Elizabeth, and we're going to keep in touch with them, which we already have sent them the website, Facebook, books to read. I'm going to forward the e-news every month to each of them, and they already responded saying they were so happy to read the e-news and see what's going on, you know, to keep them engaged, because March is a long way off. So I promised, and we promised to, if we have any kind of get-togethers, if they want to come and watch the demo beds during whatever we're doing with them between now and March, they can come and watch us in the garden. They can, we can get together and have little chats by Zoom on any questions they have about their reading, etc. So I urge everyone else out there that knows the prospective interns to keep in touch with them, because it's a long time between now and March. And we don't want these people to become wondering what the heck is going on. You know, they already said, well, when can we apply? And I said, well, the applications will be going out soon. So, the point is, stay engaged with your prospective interns out there, and don't let them just, you know, go by the wayside for months at a time. So that was a big plus for the Saturday preview.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Sushila. Excellent, most
So
excellent.
Sushila, let me address some of your comments, and that you might want to send the email addresses of those folks who are interested in taking training, because we have a mailing list for all the people that, it's over 50 people right now that we have. And granted, we rarely have 50 trainees sign up off of our prospective list. But if you would send that, then they would be included in the emails that we will be sending to everyone, and they won't miss out on any of the official information from the training group. So do that, and I would appreciate it. And then your folks will be doubly.
Okay, great. Will do.
Thanks.
Sushila?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Sabina. Maybe we can invite some of them to move the asparagus on Friday.
Yes, I will you have the list. Let's do that, Sabine. I'll
Okay,
leave
let's
that
do
to
it.
you.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Other announcements? Hey, Alina, there's a question in the chat here from Connie. Just can you clarify the number of hours required, by different categories for both veterans and for emeritus?
I just sent in the chat room, but I said there's no set limit for volunteer hours this year. Just post the hours you completed. It's been a crazy time with COVID restrictions and Zoom classes. So we have been told by WSU Extension that we will accept whatever hours people have completed. If they haven't completed any hours, have them contact me outside of this meeting.
Very good. I would hope that everybody on the call here has completed a number of hours, right? And again, thanks everybody for their patience and for their and hanging in there. And thank you, Alina and Brenda, for helping shepherd this this very, very challenging last couple of years. Any other announcements?
I have a question, not an announcement, but Kelly, could you put in the chat where to sign up for the tree certification course?
Yeah, I don't. The tree certification course would just go to that website here. Go to the look for it, DNR Urban and Community Tree. Sure, just if you do a search on that, you'll find it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and there's the website is actually on that little flyer, as you can see there. But again, Jessica will speak to that next month.
Okay, thank you.
But that's a good transition though, because I wanted to welcome and successfully joining us here this morning is Michael from Burnt Ridge, and I appreciate the challenge of of connecting in cyberland, and I appreciate the time you're giving us here, Michael. And by the way, I'm going to give you permission to share if indeed there's I'm going to stop sharing now, and if you want to go to either your website or any imagery that you have, it'd be great to have that material pulled together. And again, I thank you so much for coming here with us today.
Well, thank you. I don't have anything really prepared other than just to talk, but if anyone is interested in accessing our website, it's burntridgenursery.com or email at burntridgenursery if you have any questions, that sort of thing. We're a nursery business. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine. You're coming across great.
Great. Well, I've been farming here in Lewis County for 41 years. Since January 1980 is when I started. And I think what I have to share that would be most valuable to the master gardeners is the fact that the limitations and advantages of a coastal climate type environment. Now, I think that we have something in common in the sense that our farm, while we're located maybe 80 miles east of you, we're in the foothills of the Cascades at 1,100 foot elevation. So what I've found in 41 years of weather observations is that we get about twice the precipitation that the Puget Sound region gets. So we're probably more in line to your coastal climate in that regard than the Puget Sound region is. So we get a lot of rain. I would say one of the main differences is that because of our higher elevation site, we get on this ridge, we get snow where as soon as you drive off the ridge, it might be raining, but here it's snowing quite often. But, it's certainly the world is changing from as a result of human presence on the planet and such. And something that I've noticed and in 41 years of farming is that the weather is getting more extreme. We've certainly recorded the hottest temperature ever recorded this summer, and also the longest dry spell. In addition to all the rain that we get, we also have very long dry spells here. And the second longest dry spell was the previous summer. But it's definitely been a bit of a challenge, but that's one of the advantages that I think that I have. I have 21 acres planted to fruit and nut bearing woody plants. And that's my specialty, is fruit and nut bearing woody plants. So everything from blackberries, thornless blackberries to great big trees, nut trees and such. So so one of the big advantages of these woody plants as opposed to vegetables and cereal grains and things like that is they were able to tough out our long dry spell and still produce a crop in most instances without irrigation. So we went from June 6th to September, mid-September, without a drop of rain here. Misty days, you know, but no real rain from that whole time period. And yet most of our orchard crops produced normally without supplemental irrigation, or with very minimal, in some instances, supplemental irrigation. So the key to success in that is we do a lot of mulching, especially on young plants, to get them established, to reduce competition from weeds and grasses and such, from competing with the young establishing fruit and nut trees and such. But it's remarkable to me how tough these plants can be given such long dry spells. And but what I thought would be helpful would be for me to go over some of the specific plants that I think would be most likely to be successful in the coastal regions. So and if anyone has any further questions about this, I should mention that, you know, so we have this mail order business, which you can access at burntridgenursery.com. And we also publish a catalog once a year, which describes these different plants. So their plants are listed online and in our catalog. We also sell at the Olympia Farmers Market. We have a stall there until Christmas, on the weekends only, 10 to 3, and I'm there on Saturdays. I have an employee there on Sunday. We're there till Christmas, and then we're back again in April at the Olympia Farmers Market. And so we try and grow a very wide diversity of fruiting crops and nut crops. And that helps to have not only a year-round income, but also it helps keep our staff on full time, so that we always have something to sell, something to harvest or something to sell. So we're very diverse in that regard. So we've tried a little bit of everything, and some things that we grow are very successful commercially, and we wholesale those crops to wholesale produce buyers like Charlie's Produce and Discovery Organics and others, and to stores, co-ops in the Olympia area and stores in the Olympia area. And we also have commercial kitchens where we make wine and jams and jellies and sauces and things like that from some of our surplus crops. So I'm dealing from, you know, I'm speaking from some experience in this sort of thing. So just to give an example, with apples, you can certainly be successful with apples in the coastal regions, but what you would want to avoid with apples are varieties that have name familiarity from the supermarkets. Varieties from Eastern Washington are not likely to be successful in coastal regions. There's too much disease pressure for one thing, and not enough heat to ripen certain varieties for another. So what I would want to emphasize would be varieties, especially in the case of something like apples, varieties that have good disease resistance, that especially to scab, which would be the main disease issue in the coastal regions. And we have many such varieties that are excellent in that regard. And you can pick early ripening varieties and mid-season ripening varieties and late ripening varieties. And so I find that I can eat our own apple varieties 10 or 11 months out of the year by having a mix of different varieties ripening at different times, because some of the later ripening varieties are going to be great keepers. And some of the early ripening varieties that come on in, you know, early August will give you that early season. So, and we can do that same planting not only with apples but also with some of the other tree fruits. Like, for example, European pears can grow in coastal Washington areas, and also some are early and some are late ripening, and they generally do well. They're from Northern Europe originally. That's where they're native. So they're adaptable to the coastal conditions for the most part. And also Asian pears. This is an example of one of the Asian pear varieties that we grow. We grow varieties of Asian pears that come on as early as early August. And we have varieties that we're harvesting today still that will keep. Now, some of the later ripening varieties I was actually able to keep until early August. So that means with Asian pears, I'm able to eat my own Asian pears 12 months out of the year by having different varieties ripening at different times. They don't get scab. They're pretty easy to grow, actually. They're quick to bear, very dependable. And so that's one thing that I've tried to find out is looking at varieties for disease resistance and adaptability to our climate. And so with that in mind, there's other tree fruits that we're successful with. We grow cherries here. We grow sweet cherries and pie cherries. For coastal conditions, you'd want to look at the varieties that are especially listed as a little later ripening or crack resistant varieties, because if you get a lot of rain in June with bings or a variety like that, you can have splitting issues on the fruit that will ruin it. And so you'd want to look for varieties that are going to be better adapted in that regard. Also, having self-fertile varieties can be helpful in ensuring good pollination. Peaches might be a bit of a challenge, but we succeed with peaches here. We don't spray them. We just went with varieties that are very leaf curl resistant. And a lot of these varieties were actually developed in Western Washington or Western Oregon, such as the Frost and the Salish Summer, Avalon Pride, and Oregon Curl Free, to name 4 examples. We don't get peaches every year, but we get them most years. And we just finished off the last of our peaches just this week. So starting back in July. So by having different varieties ripening at different times. So there's a lot. Plums are very successful for us. We find the Japanese plums ripen in the summertime, the European plums more in late summer and early fall. And of course, one advantage of some of the European plums, like the prune plums, is that they dry easily. So you can split them in half, put them on a sunny window, let them shrivel up. And once they're dried, you can stick them in a jar and they'll keep for a year at room temperature. So that was an essential fruit tree on the frontier with the original homestead. Some of those plum trees are still around long after the original homesteads are gone. The plum trees are still producing. Great when you don't have access to refrigeration, and some of the early pioneers to have something that would keep so well once it's dried. Other fruit trees that might be successful for you include certain fig varieties. We found fig varieties that ripen in the middle of summer, and they're actually taking advantage of 2 growing seasons to ripen in our cooler climate. So it's just a matter of finding out those varieties that are locally adapted. There's hundreds of fig varieties, and there's only a very small handful that will ripen in Western Washington, but they do, and we even grow them commercially here at 1,100 foot elevation. So I think with some of those, like the Desert King variety, despite its name, can be successful for you as long as you have a good sunny location. They're easy to grow organically. And then in addition to the tree fruits, there's, this is when we think about fruits in Western Washington, and you look at what's native to Western Washington, we don't have any real tree fruits that are native to Western Washington. We have a native crabapple, but the fruit of the native crabapple is the size of a pea. It's the size of the tip of my little finger, and also known as the swamp crabapple. But I have those trees growing on our property, and I grafted them over to regular apples. So now they produce nice big apples. But anyway, but really what we find in the coastal regions of the Pacific Northwest in fruits that are native here are berries, lots of berries, salmon berries, thimbleberries, salal berries, evergreen huckleberries. Here's an evergreen huckleberry. You can see it's nice foliage. It's evergreen, black fruits in the fall, and red huckleberries. Those are the 2 that you're going to find in the coastal regions. This one is starting to go dormant now, the red huckleberry. But other berries include service berries, red flowering currants, let's see, blackcap raspberries, blue elderberries. Now there's two kinds of elderberries native to Western Washington. And the most common one you'll find in the coastal regions by far is the red elderberries, which are not really for human consumption. They're not toxic so much as if you ate them, you know, they could give you a stomach ache, but and if you ate a whole bunch of them, it could be toxic, I suppose. But the blue elderberries are much less common. The red elderberries you see in the forests as an understory shrub, and they're quite shade tolerant. The blue elderberries you'll only find in the open regions, and they're native to both sides of the Cascade Mountains. Incidentally, the blue elderberries are quite edible, and in fact are a terrific immune system booster. And they are found in throughout Western Washington and Eastern Washington, and they ripen much later than the red elderberries with the blue fruits, light blue fruits. And here we grow, commercially, we grow the black fruited elderberries, which are native to the Midwestern United States and also native to Scandinavia and Northern Europe. And they do very well for us. Now, one advantage of the black elderberries is that they tend to be more productive than the blues, and they don't get to be such massive shrubs. Like the blue elderberries can get 30 feet. Typically, they're more like 20, 25 feet, but 20 feet is still a pretty big plant, you know, for harvesting clusters of berries off of. So the black fruited elderberries, we maintain them at about 6 or 7 feet, and a lot of them don't get any bigger than that anyway. At any rate, they're easier to harvest. They have bigger clusters. There's good name varieties that are very high yielding. They have amazing immune boosting antiviral properties. So that you can make into a tincture or a jam or a wine or whatever. They do really well here. They're very easy to grow organically. No insect or disease problems to speak of with them. So it's a plant that, and there's even ornamental forms of them as well, like some of the black leafed varieties, purple leaf varieties with pink flowers. The flowers of elderberries, incidentally, of the black and blue elderberries are also edible and fragrant and used a lot in drinks and such, and as a vegetable. So there's a lot to get from these elderberry plants, and it's something that everybody should grow because of their incredible immune boosting properties. So you can make them into a wine or a jam or freeze them or a tincture, whatever. Very easy. And another berry that's native here is the service berry, also found on both sides of the Cascades, also known as June berry. They're a black, purplish black fruit that's kind of like a blueberry, but ripening earlier than blueberries, and one of the best pie berries in the world. The only nut tree that's native to the Pacific Northwest and also to coastal regions such as yours are the beaked hazels. These are beaked hazels here. They come in this husk, that's why they're called beaked hazel. And inside the husk is the actual nut, a tiny little hazelnut. And thick-shelled, they're not very productive compared to the cultivated varieties of hazelnuts, but they are native here and they're ripe in July. So if you think of nuts as a fall crop, you're missing the boat with hazelnuts, because the beaked hazel is ripe in July. I harvest them between mid and late July every year. That's when they're ripe. And if you wait until August, you're going to find nothing but empty shells, because the jays and squirrels will take it, all the filled ones. And the commercial varieties of hazelnuts have much bigger shell, bigger nuts, much higher yields, like 10, 20 times the yield of the native beaked hazel. And they're ripe, depending on the variety and location, between mid-August and late August, early September. That they're grown commercially here in the Pacific Northwest. It's the perfect climate for growing them. Other plants that have done exceptionally well for us in nut trees include, which you can also grow in coastal regions, includes the chestnut. Now, I'm putting on my gloves here because I want to just demonstrate how chestnuts come. They come in this prickly husk here, but inside each prickly husk are 3 nice big nuts. And so these husks are a very effective deterrent against squirrels and jays from taking the ripe crop until the nuts are actually ripe. So unlike with hazelnuts where you have to be right on top of the harvest to beat the squirrels and the jays. With chestnuts, they're protected. And chestnuts, you need 2 for cross-pollination, as you do with hazelnuts. Chestnuts are very widely adapted. They naturalize here quite readily. They bloom in the summer, so they're not affected by late frosts to speak of or incessant rains in the spring, because they bloom here typically around early July. And the nuts were ripe. We started harvesting them, some of the earliest ripening varieties in September, and most of them we finished harvesting in October. A few are still ripe now, but at any rate, so in some of the other fruiting plants that have been especially successful for us commercially and for backyard growers either way include the kiwi berries, kiwi vines. Kiwi vines produce kiwi fruits, and they grow very well here. We don't have any insect or disease problems associated with them here. And there's one that we're harvesting today is the fuzzy kiwi. These are fuzzy kiwis right here. These fruits will keep into next summer if I refrigerate them. And when we harvest them now, they're still hard as a rock. They have to go through an after ripening process to get sweet, which we can hasten that by leaving them at room temperature, or we can put them into cold storage and keep them until next summer. So one of the best keeping fruits there is. We also grow other types of kiwis, including the kiwi berries. Here's some clusters of kiwi berries here. The kiwi berries are smooth skin kiwis. So they can be eaten skin and all. And they're very sweet. We were harvesting these back in September, and I was still able to go pick a cluster off of them today. So they're still sweet and edible 2 months later. And we use them to make this kiwi jam, and we use them to make this kiwi wine, both of which are very popular. And so the kiwi berries, we have some kiwi berries that come on in August, some in September, some are red fruited, a lot of diversity, no insect problems, no disease problems with them. They ripen here every year, and they're very productive. This year we had between 50 and 200 pounds per vine on these kiwi berries. And last year, we haven't tallied it up yet, but last year on these fuzzy kiwis, one vine produced 450 pounds of fruit. Now, admittedly, it was given a large trellis space, and it was even climbing up a nearby walnut tree. So that's why it produced so much. Typically, we'll only get about 100 pounds or so per vine at a 15-foot spacing. But anyway, very dependable fruits, easy to grow, adapted to coastal conditions. Other fruits that do well in coastal conditions include the ribes family, the currants and gooseberries, which are native. That's another plant that I skipped over that's native to Western Washington, are the red flowering currants, which have very beautiful ornamental red or pink flowers in the spring that attract hummingbirds, followed by a black fruit in late summer. Not the best of the currants for fruit production, but very ornamental for flower production and hummingbird attractants. And the black gooseberry, which is native to Western Washington. In addition to those, we grow red currants that we use to make this red currant jam here, or jelly. And we do gooseberries, there's yellow gooseberries and purple gooseberries and black gooseberries. They come in many different sizes and colors. Gooseberries and currants are actually native to, in addition to being native to Washington, some of them, some of the best fruiting varieties are native to Northern Europe. So, up into Scandinavia and such. So they're very well adapted to cool coastal conditions, actually. And so I don't know how much time I'm allotted here. I know that we started a little late, but I can go on and on. I just don't want to cut into anyone's time.
Michael, this is great, and this is very exciting. I want to a couple of questions I know I have, and then I want to open up to other people questions and so forth. Is there in your catalog then? Is there detail in your catalog about which of these some of these varieties in terms of the particular characteristics that might be able to help us identify which would be appropriate for us here on the coast?
Well, it's kind of confusing because the USDA has published zone information. And what the zone, the whole United States is classified into different zones. And what those zones tell us, and I would assume that you would be zone 8. And all that's telling you is zone 8 is what the minimum temperature has been in the last 10 years in your area, in your region. And so it doesn't give you any indication of how hot it gets or anything else. It's just telling you how cold it gets, which is going to kill off certain plants that are not hardy to zone 8. Of course, everything we grow is at least hardy to zone 8. So that's not an issue because we're zone 7 because of our elevation. But the confusing thing here is that zone 8 is also, Georgia and Alabama are zone 8. But obviously, they're very different climates than coastal Washington. But what we do with the description for each plant that we list is we do give the zone listing at the end of the description. So that'll tell you whether or not it'll survive in your area there, but not whether or not it's going to ripen for you. And so if anyone is curious about whether or not you can ripen, for example, a persimmon or a jujube or a pecan in Western Washington, if you want to address that email to us in a question or call us on the phone, I'd be happy to answer that. In all 3 of those instances, I would say forget about it. You don't get enough heat to ripen pecans. I don't get enough heat. You would have to be to ripen a northern pecan in Washington State. You'd have to be in Richland, or the Tri-Cities, someplace like that where it's really hot in the summer. And dry. And that's why we grow them, because we ship to areas outside of our county. We ship all over the United States. So, and also with jujubes, not enough heat. You grow them in a greenhouse just fine, but not enough heat to ripen them outdoors. And that would probably also apply to persimmons. You could grow persimmons, but I think they'd have trouble losing astringency. So there's better choices, I would say, in this regard. So we try and we have to keep our descriptions kind of brief in the catalog and on the website, but it gives you some idea. I think. But
you're clearly welcoming email and or other questions, right? Directly.
Absolutely.
About, yeah.
Sure. Or come down and visit us at the market on Saturdays, Sundays in Olympia if you happen to be there.
I'm curious. I know. In talking with John, he was talking about you're already experiencing some scarcity and some sellouts. For this next year.
Yeah.
So what?
Demand has doubled for fruiting plants. Doubled, absolutely. Yeah, in the last with COVID, I think people concerned about food security and people with time on their hands and such, both I think are issues. And so, yeah, it's good to get an order in early. That way, even if it's not available for shipping right now, because we still have several months to go. We've just started digging some of our nursery stock today. Some of the things that are starting to go dormant early, but it takes us several months to have our nursery dug. Actually, let's see. So we're mid-November now almost. Yeah, we'll probably won't have everything dug and ready to ship until February. But we have a lot of stuff in pots, and we are starting to dig. So we're taking orders now, even though we might not have them ready now. So if anyone is interested in getting any plants from us, we can ship directly to you via UPS. It's just 1 day in transit. Or if you're at the Olympia Farmers Market, we can bring it up to the market if you notify us a few days ahead of time and if everything is ready. Or you can pick up at our farm by appointment only. We're only open by appointment. So it's best to place an order ahead of time to find out, if what you're looking for is available at this time. It may not be available until February. So, or it may be available today. So just check with us to find out, and then we can ship accordingly. or
Sharon, I
or-
see you have a question. Sharon?
Yes, one of the things we get asked a lot at plant clinics is, especially in Ocean Shores area, is the deer resistance of these plants. That's a big
Yep.
question.
Yep, yeah, it's a good one, and there's not a lot out there really that I can say is absolutely deer resistant or deer proof planting. Most deer are omnivores, and they're going to try just about anything, and so we've gone to the trouble of fencing our 6.5 foot big game fencing around our orchards to keep the deer out, because we're trying to keep a lot of our fruit trees on the smaller side to make it easier to harvest, and also to reduce injuries. We don't want to have people getting up on high ladders reaching fruit and such, and so we just plant trees closer together and tend to keep them smaller for the most part, and that makes them susceptible to heavy deer browse and such, and so we try and keep them out. Having a dog helps a lot. If it's an outdoor dog, we sell a deer repellent that we found is the most effective deer repellent. It also is certified for organic use and has fertilizer value, and it's effective, but it still needs to be reapplied every few months. But the scent of human is also an effective deer repellent. Like hair from your hairbrush put on a tree, any kind of scent of human is going to be a deer repellent. Also, scent of human products that are really smelly, like Lifebuoy soap or Irish Spring soap left in the wrapper, hung from a tree. If you leave it in the wrapper, then it'll take much longer to dissolve in the rains, and deer find the scent of those two things disgusting, and will avoid trees that are protected with little bars of Lifebuoy or Irish Spring soap. So there's really there's not a lot of, they're going to try anything. They're absolutely going to try everything, and certainly there are some things, like with our kiwi vines, for example. They love kiwi vines, but if you walk into a kiwi vineyard that is not protected with deer fencing, you can see the deer browse line is at about 5 feet, where the vines are growing to the edge of the trellis and then hanging down. Everything below that point is eaten off. Well, our kiwi vines, these are vines that grow 10 feet a year. So what did we do? We put the trellises up higher than our head. So the trellises are up at about 7 feet. So we can reach up and harvest the clusters of fruit easily, but the fruit bearing areas are out of reach of the deer easily. And so it can be helpful to, strategize with something like that. So you can do individual fencing around trees, around either that or fence in a whole orchard. Those are, several options. There's many kinds of deer fencing too. There's the wire fencing, the big game fencing that we use, which is real permanent. It's 6.5 feet high and it's quite effective. And but we also sell a plastic, black plastic deer fencing that you can cut with a pair of scissors, and it lasts for a number of years. And but it's not going to last a lifetime. But it is very effective, and it's very easy to put around individual plants or to enclose an area very quickly and simply.
Other questions?
I just want to invite him and his products to our Elma garden show.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I have to say it's kind of hard for us to get away now. We pretty much, my wife and I pretty much work 6 or 7 days a week, and so we kind of our Olympia excursion is once a week is when I get off the farm. That's about it.
Other questions for Michael?
I have a question about kiwi. How many male plants do you need per female? Is there some ratio that should be followed?
It depends on your spacing. I we've often suggested 8-1 or 12-1, but really in our vineyards, I think it's more like 15-1, and that's working fine. So, yeah.
Okay. So most homeowners would not face that dilemma. They
No,
have one of
no.
each, right?
Right. Just have one of each. Yeah. Incidentally, the fuzzy kiwi and the hardy kiwi are so closely related that I've crossed the two. Plus, they bloom at the same time. So one male of either species will pollinate the other species as well as its same species. So you could have one male fuzzy kiwi, for example, and it'll pollinate your fuzzy kiwi female and a hardy kiwi female. So, but not Arctic Beauty. Arctic Beauty kiwis are a third species, and they bloom earlier and they ripen much earlier. They also have a smooth skin, but they're ripe in August, and they do bloom several weeks earlier than the other two species. So, but yeah, they're a great crop to grow. One crop I didn't mention that, you know, I should have is blueberries. Of course, we grow about 35 different varieties of blueberries. And I want to tell you that I ate blueberries this morning with my granola. So I still have ripe, fresh blueberries. Some of the later ripening varieties, as long as I netted them to keep birds off of them, I still have them. And here it is November. Actually, I picked most of them a couple weeks ago, but they still kept well. So, and yet our blueberry harvest started back in late June. So by having different varieties, you can have an really extended season for fresh blueberries. Also, there's evergreen blueberries that will do very well in coastal regions. So the evergreen blueberry varieties can also serve as a visual barrier, you know, like a hedgerow or something like that. A lot of them will turn red over the winter, but they'll hold on to the leaves till the new leaves push them off in the spring. And there's dwarf varieties. There's some blueberry varieties that are only ground covers that will only get 6 or 8 inches. So there's a lot of variation. Purple leaf blueberry plants, pink flowered blueberry plants, blueberries that turn pink instead of blue. So there's a lot of variation there in fruits, and you know, they're very well adapted to coastal conditions, as are the relatives of theirs, such as the huckleberries and obviously cranberries, also related to blueberries.
Michael, how did the heat dome of this past summer affect you in the orchard?
Good question. It was 107 at our farm, and all the gooseberry varieties that were ripening at that time, right at that time, mostly dropped, and currants mostly dropped. I've never seen that happen before, but and it probably didn't help that we had a black landscape fabric underneath them for weed control, and that, you know, helped to absorb even more heat, I think. But the currants that had ripened before then were okay, and the ones that had ripened after that weren't quite ripe, they mostly survived. So, but it was the ones that were just approaching ripeness. And we also noticed that with blueberries, that we lost maybe 20% of the blueberries that were ripening at that time, that they just fell off, or were damaged. But the bulk of the blueberry crop did fine. They did fine. So, and incidentally, one of the blueberry patches that was heavily mulched, received no irrigation last summer and still produced a normal crop, which is pretty amazing.
Chris, you have a question.
I actually have 2. I'm curious about that very late blueberry, what cultivar that is, and also what kind of chestnut were you speaking of? I mean, it wasn't the American one, right?
Well, the chestnuts that I was referring to, this particular variety, yow. I don't know. I can't see myself anymore. I don't know if you can see that, but I've done a lot of work with chestnuts over the last 41 years, and I started out with Chinese chestnuts, and I found that they were not adapted to cool Western Washington conditions. So I cut them all down, all the Chinese chestnuts. I got rid of them. And so what I did was I searched old homesteads around the Pacific Northwest for chestnuts, and I also searched the world for chestnuts, and I found some of the best producing varieties up in high alpine regions from Japan, and mostly from Italy and France and Switzerland, places like that. And we eventually imported some of those varieties through a very long process of quarantine. And so I've identified some European chestnuts that are our best producers here. Such as one is Marron di Val di Susa, also known as Susa. And one is Belle Épine from France. So this is an Italian and a French variety. And another Italian variety is Precoce Megule. And these are varieties that we've identified that are very good producers in our cool maritime region. I consistently get good crops from them of commercial quality chestnuts. And I'm sorry, what was your first question?
The blueberry cultivar.
Oh, the rich
That
cultivars,
late-
right? The late ripening ones, yeah. Elliott, Liberty, and Aurora are the three late ripening. These are fall ripening blueberry varieties, and they have very good fruit qualities in addition to be late ripening, and also our Elliott is known for being especially nutritious as well. So, yeah.
Sharon, you have a question.
Actually, I have two also. The first one, is there a self-pollinating kiwi? Because
Yes.
I have the little guys, and I don't know that there's any other kiwis around.
Yes, there is. It's a variety called Isai. It's from Japan. And
Okay.
Isai translates as bears quickly or something like that, fruits quickly, or precocious. And so it bears fruit quickly, and it is considered somewhat self-pollinating. It's been observed by others that if there is a male vine, that it'll produce a heavier yield with a male present. But it is the only kiwi that I'm aware of that is self-pollinating. And it is one of the hardy kiwis. So it's a smooth skin variety. So it would be ripe in September.
And what I see happening with my vines is I see the fruit, they're really not quite ripe, and then they're gone. I don't know who's getting them.
Well, here's the thing. One thing that you should be aware of with all of the hardy kiwis, Actinidia arguta, these kinds here, if you can see anything, is that they all should be harvested ideally before they get soft. So if you can find a single soft one, pick all of them immediately, and that way they'll keep for several months. If you and they're just so much easier to handle that way. You can handle them, somewhat more roughly. You can pick them by the cluster, and you just put them into a crate, and fill up the crate or whatever. If you wait until they're vine ripe, then they'll be soft and squishy, and someone's likely to come along and pick them off. But when they're hard, they are not edible when they're hard. But if you can find a single soft one, then that indicates to me that they're gonna get sweet as soon as they soften, which they will do afterwards. So if you wanna hasten their ripening, leave them at room temperature once you've harvested them in a bag with an apple. If you want to keep them as long as possible, just stick them in the fridge. So.
Terry, you have a question.
I would like to know what you're using for mulch on your plants.
Good question. We use whatever's available. In the last month, I've been mulching a lot with kiwi prunings. So after we picked the clusters of kiwi berries off of the stems, we had all these extra leaves and stems. So I would take those and mulch with them, just because that's what I have a lot of right now. We have cartloads and cartloads of them, because we sold let's see, probably 4,000 flats of kiwi berries in the last month. So that adds up to a lot of leaves and stems. Yeah. But we use sawdust, mostly alder sawdust, which we have a lot of here. We have a chipper, so we chip the branches of our trees that we're pruning. So we use those, just chipped wood. sometimes, if I have leaves, I'll use leaves or just whatever. And also I find that since I'm an organic grower, we don't use herbicides. So if I'm preparing a new site for planting in the future, one thing I'll do is I'll just take recycled cardboard and lay it down on weeds where I want to create a future planting area, and then we'll put the mulch material on top of the cardboard, and or any kind of organic matter that's available to us. But if you do it ahead of time enough, then the mulch will eventually break down and become a nice soil eventually. Meanwhile, the cardboard prevents weeds from pushing up through the mulch material. So we use.
I use a lot of cardboard.
Yeah. And I always put, mulch material on top of it to keep it from blowing away and adding organic matter that will then decay. So, yeah.
Kathleen has a question here comparing the taste and advantages of blueberries versus service berries.
Well, they are not related at all. Service berries are in the rose family, so they're more closely related to apples and almonds. In fact, if you bake service berries in a pie, you'll get a little taste of almond from the seeds within the service berries. Service berries have tiny edible seeds, just like blueberries, but yet that really comes out when you bake the fruit. So service berries are sweet, like blueberries, and they can be used in much the same way. It's a great pie berry, as I said. It makes a great jam. You can use them in your pancakes. You can just use them in your granola. You can freeze them, use them throughout the year. You can dry them. I think traditional use was as pemmican mixed with salmon, along with salal berries and other berries. So they're maybe not quite as juicy as a blueberry, but they're juicy and they're good eat. They're good fresh. It's a wonderful. They're grown commercially in the Midwest and also in Canada, in Saskatchewan and Alberta. They're grown commercially, and they're called Saskatoons or June berries. Although here it's not really June. It's really for us at least. Service berries are usually ripe maybe at the very end of June or the first week of July or 2 of July. It takes a warmer climate than ours to have them ripen in June.
Michael, your time here has been hugely valued, and it's been a great pleasure for us to have you here. And I think for all of us here on the call, I think it's clear that you'll be very responsive to our emails or to our phone questions. And so I think that richness of knowledge, I think, is incredibly helpful. I want to encourage everybody to, by the way, to check out the website, right? And take because it's a rich website with a lot of information on there relative to the varieties and so forth that are there. And of course, look at the wares. It's holiday time. It's gift giving season.
I just wanted to mention one fruit I forgot to mention is mulberries. And I just showed you a mulberry wine and a mulberry jam. Great fruit for anywhere in Washington. They fruit right away, delicious berries, really easy to grow. So on a tree, but we prune them as bushes.
Michael, thank you again so much for today. I want to encourage everybody again to visit the website, visit you at the farmers market in Olympia.
Sure.
Because it sounds there's just a huge wealth of information as well as just some great gift ideas. As we get into the holiday season here.
All right.
Big thank you for joining us here today, and I appreciate your patience and wrestling with us as we got you connected here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, I want to go back just a quick share here, and just to remind everybody then that what we're going to be doing here for for December is that we'll be back here in December for the 14th, the second Tuesday, for Jessica Lloyd joining us here from DNR. I want to thank everybody who's been here today for the program, and appreciate your patience in dealing with some of the technical hiccups that we had for here. So again, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.